So, we've been in this pandemic for almost a year now, which is kind of crazy, but basically during this year people were really bored, so they were trying to kill some time by watching a lot of Netflix and reading a lot of books, and that resulted in me seeing a ton of quarantine recommendations on my YouTube For You page, and I was like, hey, let's make one of these myself, but I actually don't really have that much stuff to pick up from, so let me watch some more stuff to finally be able to decide, and now I finally have things to pick up from. So here's my ultimate recommendations list that I've made during quarantine, but not only. And yeah, sit back, grab a snack and relax, and let's just move on. So I'm gonna start off with books, then go to movies, shows and podcasts. And yeah, I tried to collect as many things as possible without making this video extremely long, so we will see how that goes. So the first book I have on my list is my absolutely all-time favorite book. I read it in the summer. It's called Normal People by Sally Rooney. And oh my god, I don't want to spoil anything, but basically it's about a girl who is from a very wealthy family, but she has very, I don't know, family issues, and about a guy whose mother works for this girl's family. She basically cleans their house and stuff like that, and they go to school together, but he's a popular one and she's a weirdo, quote unquote. So they basically don't talk in school, but they kind of meet and have this secret relationship, and it's basically about caring about opinions of other people. We actually hurt ourselves and people who we actually care about. So yeah, and it has a very unique style. It starts on I think February 2011, and then it's 3 months later, and then at the beginning it's a situation, and then it's a recap of everything that happened in that 3-month gap. Yeah, I actually think that everyone should read it. It's great. Seriously, I highly recommend. Another book I read, I think a month ago, it's called Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton, and I think it's a memoir or autobiography. I don't really know what's the difference, but I feel it's a comfort book for me. It's just so funny. She basically talks about her experience in her 20s, her trying to figure out relationships and stuff like that, and also about friendships, and it's really funny. It's this type of book that once you finish it, once you are done with reading everything, you can just, every time you're sad, just open at a random page and just start reading, because it's separated for long chapters and short stories, worst date stories or worst party stories, and they are really short, literally 2 pages. And there are also lists. Those are actually very random, but I found them really funny. So yeah, Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton, seriously also great book. Okay, so about this book, I think I've talked about before in my first ever obsessions video, but I just want to say a few of these things I've talked about before, because this is my ultimate recommendations list. So if those things are still my favorite things, I cannot just not talk about them. The book is called What a Girl Gotta Do by Holly Byrne, and it's basically about a girl who decides that for a month straight she will react to every type of sexist situation that she will face and address the sexism. And I was actually very surprised of how many of these things were there. It covers a lot of very interesting topics related to sexism, gender roles and the pretty privilege. Highly recommend. Love that book. So I'm gonna talk about movies, and I can't talk about movies without mentioning Lady Bird, that I've actually mentioned in my first ever obsessions video, but I just love this movie. It's such a funny and comforting story. It's one of my comfort movies, So it's basically about this girl, Lady Bird. She's going through her senior year of high school, and just her relationship with her mom, her friendship, her like about like guys and like her first time, and it's such a relatable story, like I don't know, and also love the visuals. It's a A24 movie. They make like really aesthetically pleasing movies. I would say it's like probably the most realistic coming of age movie I've seen. It doesn't really have like that many like crazy situations that were like impossible to happen in real life, or at least very hard to happen. I would say that like most people can find something in this movie that they relate to, so yeah, highly recommend if you haven't watched it yet. Another one of my comfort movies, another movie with Timothée Chalamet in it. I don't think it's a coincidence. Rainy Day in New York. Oh my god, I love this movie. Like seriously, it was just so fun. Also the visuals, beautiful. I mean, it's a rainy day in New York, like you can already tell it's going to be super like aesthetically pleasing. What's the story about? So there is like a students couple and they go to New York for a weekend because the girl has an opportunity to interview a famous director, and the guy, the Timothée Chalamet, is just like kind of like chilling there because it's like his hometown. And I don't know, they met a lot of like famous people, have these like very intellectual conversations, and it's really fun to watch, you know. Another movie from A24 Studios, as you can tell, I'm obsessed with them. Waves. I would say this movie, besides the fact that it's very aesthetically pleasing, has amazing soundtrack. Besides that, it has a very unique plot. I haven't really seen a lot of movies that talk about stuff like that. So yeah, it's basically about a brother and sister and how like their choices that seem like so little actually turn out to like take a huge part, like really change their life, you know. It's kind of like the butterfly effect, I would say. It's kind of sad, not gonna lie, but it's kind of like hopeful at the same time at the end. Anyway, beautiful movie. Also, I think her name is Alexa Dami, the girl from Euphoria that the whole Instagram is obsessed with. She's playing there. Okay, this movie is called Booksmart, another one of my comfort coming of age comedies. It is such a wholesome movie, like seriously. It's about two girls, like they are best friends and they are both like really book smart, and they are going to like, I don't know, like Yale or Columbia or something like that, and they realize that they haven't partied at all throughout the high school, and they kind of want to like get the brief of like the high school experience on their last day of senior year. So that's very interesting, very funny, and it also kind of makes fun of like the whole like partying, getting drunk, teenage experience, I guess. So yeah, really worth watching. So this movie is different from all the ones I've mentioned before. It's called Truman Show. It's pretty old. It's from like 90s, and it's about a guy who realizes that he is living in a reality show live streamed 24/7. Everything he does is like recorded and everyone in the world can watch it, and everyone around him realizes that, but like not him, and it has been like that since he was born basically. And he lives in this like, you know, very like dreamy, like beautiful, picture perfect island, but this island actually turns out to be just, you know, a Hollywood studio, and it is very interesting. It talks like about, you know, impact that media have on people's lives. Yeah, very interesting, also really aesthetically pleasing. So yeah, would highly recommend if you haven't watched it yet. Let's move on to shows now. I don't really watch like that many shows. I feel like I used to watch a lot of shows, but I don't anymore. So this show is called Normal People. Guess what? It's based on a book, Normal People. It's a great show on its own, and it's also a great show like based on a book. I would recommend reading the book first because there are a lot of like personal thoughts of the characters in the book, and without doing that you might find this show very like out of context. You will be like, you did this for what? So yeah, I would recommend reading the book first. And also there's a lot of like explicit scenes in there, so that's also something you should be aware of, I guess. Another great show, this one is a Netflix original. I think I've talked about it before. Queen's Gambit, you might have seen it, but if you didn't, you should totally do that. It's about this very talented chess player. She's a woman in the 60s, and chess was at the time kind of like a men's thing, so that's also very interesting. And actually I was watching a video yesterday on like how the outfits are like perfectly matching things that are happening in the show, so that's another very like subtle detail but also really interesting. I would say it's like probably the best Netflix original I've seen. Now let's move on to podcasts. So the first podcast is called What We Said. I talk about them like all the time. So it's basically a very like girl talk kind of thing, kind of like a very chatty podcast, and it's hosted by two high school best friends, JC Marie Smith and Chelsea Jade Curtis. And JC is like a full-time influencer and Chelsea is like a certified health coach, and it's also kind of like interesting like their perspective on different stuff, and they do so many fun episodes. So they do like stories episodes when they read like their like listener stories. They had like worst first kiss stories, like Halloween stories, like stuff like that. They also have like advice column once in a month, and they just talk about like so many fun things, and the dynamic of the podcast is like so incredible. You feel like you are like chatting with like two best friends. I just love it. Another podcast is Growing with the Flow by Nina Florence, and Nina Florence is one of my favorite YouTubers. Actually, her video she did like 6 months ago inspired me to do this video. So yeah, and also she actually, because she did a video like that, and also she mentioned normal people in that video, and yeah, so if there is like a micro chance she's watching it, thank you for introducing me to normal people. Oh my god. And just basically thank you for creating content. Like I just love her so much, and I was so happy when I found out she's making a podcast. And it's basically her podcast also is like very chatty, and it gives me like this kind of like I'm with my best friend sitting on a couch under a blanket drinking tea and talking about life vibes. So yeah, if you like more of like chatty podcasts, would recommend these two. So yeah, those are all of my recommendations. I probably forgot about something, and I will be editing this and regret not mentioning something. So yeah, if you enjoyed this, comment below if you would like me to make a similar video, like maybe in like 6 months later or something like that. Comment below if you have watched anything I've mentioned or read or listened to. If you enjoyed this video, give it thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and you can also follow me on my Instagram, which is called @gosiecal. And yeah, that would be everything. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you in my next video. I don't know what I'm doing with my hands. Goodbye.